Hello, welcome to episode 23 of The Hive, back with the usual panel, Jo Dodds, Lorna, Leeson and me, Jo Moffatt. And today we are going to be talking about virtual workplaces. Virtual workplaces are here to stay, even more so in light of recent announcements. So how do we go about making them as human as possible and not lose productivity? So Jo, do you want to kick off with some thoughts on this one?
Shall I start with my individual thing again?
Treat people as individuals. That's how you make them human. Yeah.
I think the starting point is to really get comfortable with the concept of the fact that working outside of an office is actually a really positive thing for lots of people, and lots of organisations do that already, regardless of the pandemic and everything else. You know, they've built whole businesses on working remotely all around the world and done it really well. So, you know, so many people start with the mindset of it's a compromise and there's issues and it's not going to work. Well, let's start with the view that actually many organisations have made it work, and there are lots of ways to keep people engaged and working well and productive and everything else, and apply that to our thinking and see how we can make this situation work positively for our organisation and for our people.
Because I suppose there's an argument to say that if we were actually creating the workplace, or let's call it an office at this point for the purposes of this conversation, if we were creating a thing called a workplace and we were doing it with a blank sheet of paper from scratch, would we actually have created what we've actually been working in for the last few decades? Probably not. So have we got an opportunity to reshape it? Lorna, what's your take on this?
I find it really interesting seeing how different clients and companies that I'm talking to and working with are tackling this. So I think exactly to the question you just raised, Jo, if we were to reinvent the workplace and how we think about where work is performed, how might we do that? Now, one of the clients that I'm working with, they have a group of people who are boots on the ground, operational folk, have to work from their security and operations guys and girls. So they have to really be in a specific location. They can't do that job from home from a laptop. Mm-hmm. So there's been one way of thinking, which is okay. So how do we be flexible and keep them safe? Because that job's always going to be. It's like doctors, nurses. That, you know, there's bus drivers. You have to work from somewhere.
You can't drive a bus at home.
I mean, one day you'll be able to, right? Just on your iPhone, like
yes,
this.
That is true.
And then you've got, and I'm talking to another client actually that's talking about people who are working out on oil rigs, and actually they are saying, well, you know, one day in the future they might be doing some of that stuff remotely from an iPad. They won't have to be out there. So there's also that kind of real future focused thinking. But those people who have been in cubicles in offices like battery chickens for decades, and we've now got an opportunity to completely reinvent that and think about, well, what do we really need? We need somewhere where we can collaborate, somewhere we can bring customers and show them what we're all about, somewhere where teams can, you know, stick stuff on walls, somewhere we can have a coffee. Right, that's what the office is for. And we had a conversation this week before the lockdown stuff where some folks have gone back into the office, and because it's very open plan and we're still navigating it, so they've gone in and they're doing remote Zoom calls, but there isn't a meeting room that's big enough to hold everybody, so they're all doing remote Zoom calls from their desk, and it's sort of got really noisy for people who aren't on the Zoom call. So you're on a Zoom call with somebody who's sitting 6 feet away from you, also plugged into their laptop. So actually that makes us rethink about the kinds of spaces that we need in offices, because you are going to be co-working with people who aren't in the same location. Now, lots of global businesses have already had this problem for a very long time, and have found lots of really good ways to navigate it. So I think the call to action, which is what Jo was saying, which is if you're a business that's been thinking about work in terms of you do it in this grey building between these hours, plugged into this desktop, and that's the only way you can work, free your mind. Free your mind.
Interesting. I saw some fascinating stats actually earlier this week around call centre contact centre, call centre, response times and productivity. And, you know, I mean, that is the call centre environment can be, you know, in our minds, the classic sense of the cubicles and the batteries and the rows and the rows and the signs, you know, how many calls outstanding waiting to be answered and all that kind of stuff going on. And these stats were showing that now that those functions have actually been dispersed into people's homes or elsewhere, far from seeing a reduction in turnaround time, far from seeing a reduction in customer satisfaction as a result of calls being dealt with, they're seeing the opposite. You know, productivity is up, call handling volumes are up, speed of response is up, customer satisfaction with outcomes is up.
Yeah,
it's like,
I've seen it.
great.
Client. Exactly that. What I'm also seeing, though, this is something about keeping one step ahead, is that you will get new challenges that you need to address. So what lots of people are really missing, and it's back to the how do we make it more human thing that we were talking about, is,
which we actually haven't answered yet, of course, have we? So let's answer it.
The human bit is the social connection, right? That's the bit. It's the social connection. It's you see me, I feel like a person who's valued. And what I'm hearing, I've got a client who has a remote call centre, and they made their call centre remote way before COVID, and so they're kind of a little bit ahead of the learning curve. And what they're now trying to navigate is how do we help those folks feel part of something, because what those guys missed being in one location was the banter across the desk, the coffee machine chats, the after work drinks. How do you replicate that is the bit you need to think about.
So I've been reading and listening. I listened to a podcast the other day, and it was an advertising agency, and they were talking about how they were going to go out to the office. So of course, events have overtaken them at the moment, but this will be into the future for them, and they're exactly doing that. They're reimagining how they can work remotely for most of the time, but also come into the office. And you know, they're from a traditional industry where they're used to being in the office for long hours and drinking after work and all that sort of stuff. So there's
surely not the advertising industry world. I find that hard to believe.
Sparkling water, of course. And so, you know, they were saying they need those social occasions because it's something that is part of their sort of industry, if you like, but also that if you do the thing about come into the office when you want to, it's open, you know, that you'll end up with people, you know, some people in on Monday, some people on Tuesday, some people on Wednesday, and then that camaraderie thing isn't there. So they're talking about maybe having, you know, core days where people come in if they want to, or they do come in, and then the rest of the time they don't. So they're thinking about how they can use the structure of the week on certain days to have that sort of camaraderie. But I think as well, a lot of the what I've seen since the lockdown in terms of remote working has been training for leaders, training for managers, and narrative around how managers either are sort of thinking they need to see their people to see if they're productive or not, and really it should be about performance and something else. And we've talked about that a lot ourselves. I haven't seen lots of training for people, you know, employees on how to work remotely. It was always like we've trained the managers, or tried to train the managers and tried to give them a different perspective, and just left everyone else to work from home and do the best they can scenario. And you know, we see it, Jo, working with Engaged Success. We all work remotely, and you know, some people are great at it. They're really good at asynchronous communication and you know, a bit of banter and building relationships because they just are good at it, or they've done it before, or maybe they've had some training. Some people really struggle with it, and they want to have meetings and they want to make the sort of corporate thing happen because that's what they're used to. And I do think there's a real opportunity to, you know, teach and coach employees as a group on how to create those connections and how to work independently but also with other people, rather than just expecting as usual, rather than sort of manager bashing and saying it's all up to the leaders and the managers to work out how to do it. Actually, you know, how can we teach other people to ask for what they need, or to do the things that they need, or whatever, because I think that's a real key part of it.
Interesting point. Yeah, it's almost like
you look not so convinced.
Who, me? Or Lorna?
Me.
No, you look, Jo.
I've got no poker face. It's not the advertising agency thing. I think they've got an opportunity to rethink about what agency culture is, and maybe there's some stuff they don't want to replicate in that after work drinking long hours thing that might be more inclusive.
Yeah,
that's my initial thought there.
And if you listen to the podcast, to be fair, that is what they were talking about. I may have spun it in very traditional terms, but they were very much thinking forward.
And that's the other thing, is what are the assumptions we're making about what work is? So I did a workshop this week and I sent out a note beforehand, and it said things like, if your home office isn't the most comfortable place for you to sit for 4 hours, don't sit there. Don't put a suit on just because that's what you think you need to do. Wear the most comfortable thing you've got, have some snacks, get some fresh air. Like almost giving people permission to, I think we come with a whole lot of assumptions that are old world work thinking, which is, I've got to be smart and wear something with a collar. I can't have anything unprofessional going on around me. I've got to work from somewhere with a nice bookcase behind me. And that's just extra pressure you don't need. Taking that away and just turn up.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's really interesting. So in the same way that organisations need to, picking up Jo's point, in the same way that organisations should take this as an opportunity to sort of rethink what the workplace might be, whether that is in a building or a mixture. Actually, we as workers, the individual members of the workforce, we're just as guilty as everybody else, as sort of saying, well, what has this meant? It's meant we take what we normally do in an office and we replicate it.
Yes, absolutely.
And we replicate every aspect of it. And
I see your whiteboards.
Yeah,
I raise you my monkeys.
Come on now, we have that in an office.
And my piano.
The thing is, you don't write very much on your whiteboard, Jo.
No, but
I've
look,
noticed.
that's apparently my bathroom. My daughter decided to tell me what design we wanted on the new bathroom, so I'm not quite sure how
Okay.
So yeah, it is interesting. My husband is working from home. I mentioned him on the videos before, and he very much took a while. He still says he doesn't like working from home, but I think he's really sort of got used to the idea now and has got his own routines and so on. But he works everywhere in the house. He's got his own study. He works in the sitting room. He works on the dining room table. He works in the kitchen. He has to change his environment, which he wouldn't have done in the office. And I think that is a sign that he's actually starting to understand, what suits him. Although we do have a bit of a family joke, because he talks about proper jobs. They're 9 to 5 in an office. So our daughter tells him that he now doesn't have a proper job. So more for him for defining what a proper job was. Because obviously he's in a different situation now. But he's found his way, because it's been that long now that he's sort of worked out that you've got to do what suits you. And I think we need to be encouraging that for people, as you say, the bit about be comfortable, wear the right clothes, eat properly, get up and down, have your water with you, all that stuff.
And does it mean being on a Zoom call all day, or an open Zoom call all day? I mean, I saw something in the week, somebody saying, my boss is expecting me to be on Zoom all day and every day. I mean, is that replicating the office environment, or I think Lorna wants to comment.
Go on, have a rant. Go on, go for it.
Trust.
Explain.
It's about trust. If you don't trust your people to think if you're not thinking about output, and you're not sort of measuring how you're all getting stuff done in that way, and you think the only way you know what people are doing is by monitoring them, that's trust. Work on your trust, and you shouldn't be managing people or running a business. You should be running a prison.
There's a similar thing to that. There was somebody complaining that their company wanted to put productivity monitoring tools on their own personal computers, which again sounds a bit.
Didn't provide equipment, and then wanted to
didn't provide equipment, but wanted to put monitoring tools on this person's own personal equipment that they would.
Many horror stories about people who've done the stupidest things,
aren't there?
It's without thinking, right?
Yeah.
They're not thinking.
And I do think there is a flip side, because there is so much talk about that it's the community that's missing when you are all working in a disparate way, and it is if you don't make a way for it to happen. And I, in the defence of people doing something like that, if you were to think positively about it, maybe they think it's a way of creating that environment where you have the banter and you can talk to people and everything else. Obviously, from our point of view, it just sounds awful, and that he wouldn't do that.
It wouldn't work in reality. If you've got 50 tiny little squares, and you've got to go, what's Bob up to then?
Where's he gone? He's not been there for, I haven't seen him in that square for about 6 hours.
Having said that, what about, they've done event software where you can visit stands and go into different areas and everything else. So there must be a company that has or is thinking about developing software, and I think there has been software for co-working, and I don't know how it works, but there must be a company somewhere that's operating some sort of developing some sort of software for exactly that you are sort of all together, and you can go to somebody's desk and have a little chat with them on the way to the water cooler or whatever. I don't know. Somebody will be doing it,
Remo is the conference software, and Kindfest 2020 was run on Remo last week, and it was brilliant. Really good. Exactly that. Yeah. That's a good example of a potential virtual workplace, and it's back to what we were saying the other week about being intentional with the technology that you use. But the thing about tech is there's always a human assumption or behaviour that sits underneath that it's going to enable or not. Like the thing when Skype came and it had the little green light, and I remember ages ago when Skype first came and it had the little green light, and so I'd go and make a cup of tea or put the laundry on if I was working from home, and I'd dash back every 2 minutes to wiggle my mouse so the green light didn't go off, because I knew that people were thinking, why is she not working?
Paranoid, Lorna.
But that's the culture. That's the culture. Why aren't you always available? Why aren't you there when I need you? Because I'm not a robot, dude.
Yes, exactly. And that's what you get. Okay, lovely. Anything else to add? Are we done?
So much.
I think that's one of the takeaways, isn't it? I'm not a robot, dude.
I'm not a robot, dude. You're welcome. Yes,
we'll have that one. Thank you, Jo, Lorna. As always, it was a treat. You see, we enjoy our Zoom conversations. It's a little bit of our chance to get together.
All day talking to you, Jo.
Oh, that's probably why then.
Just an hour is fine.
Great stuff. Lovely. Great to see you all. Everyone, thank you for listening, and bye-bye.